#1 Florida hockey podcast. You're right where you're supposed to be. I hope you guys enjoy this one. 3, 2, 1.
I love it. Great job, Ben Castro, producer to the stars. It is Florida's favorite hockey show, the Cats and Bolts podcast. You're seeing my very good friend, Brent Woltman, Brent from Wellington. We're going to be hearing a lot from him later on, but we have a Hi, Brent. Welcome to the Cats and Bolts podcast.
Thank you.
Hey, good to have you here. But we have royalty. Let's go. Let's not wait any longer. We have the voice of the Tampa Bay Lightning, Dace Randorf, joining us right off the hop. And I got to tell you, Rambo, longtime friend of mine since the 90s. Tampa Bay Lightning fans have been very polite and very patient. They've been writing in, asking for more Bolts talk, more Bolts guests. And we got him here, the esteemed Dace Randorf from Scripps Television. How's that for an intro, Rambo?
That's great. I'll take it. And I'm glad to hear that the Bolts Nation is, registering with you down there in South Florida. That's good. It's a good thing to have this rivalry the way it is in the state of Florida.
Oh, well, you've seen it a little before I did on its way up. And by the way, Brent, Dave, Brent. There's a Regina connection between you two as well. Maybe later. David, the start of this season for the Lightning, I'm not going to cast any judgments or say anything. I'm seeing it from their fans online, like the house is on fire. Your thoughts on the start for the Lightning?
I don't think anybody's happy with 1 win in 4 games. I was looking at this opening stretch of which they were playing 6 games in 10 days since the schedule came out. And that included 2 games to begin at home, then 4 on the road, 2 sets of back-to-backs on the road, and 3 against division teams. And I thought, everybody's busy. Everybody's schedule is hectic and condensed. But as it relates to the Lightning, I was thinking you do not want to fall behind in this Atlantic Division, which I think you could argue is the toughest division in the National Hockey League. And, they bounced back with back-to-back on the road. They against Boston and in Washington last night. They took 3 of 4 points. So that's good. Nobody was happy with their first 2 games with the Lightning. Their coaching staff certainly wasn't. They blew a game against Ottawa in their season opener. They had a couple of 2-goal leads, which they lost. And then they just completely looked terrible in their second game against the New Jersey Devils. And I'm not saying anything that I don't think anybody in that room would repeat. So is the house on fire? No. This team is quite capable on going on a long run. I've seen it time and time again. This is now my 6th season as the television voice of the Lightning, and they are capable of rattling off an 8-2 stretch or even more than that. We saw it last year when they really solidified their playoff spot in the second half of the season. They were the 4th best team in the NHL from, I think, middle of January on, right into the end. So they can get it together, and they are going to need to because they've looked a little disjointed, and for whatever reason, they've got a bad mojo happening in overtime. They lost last night in OT at Washington. They led that game twice by a goal. Washington got a power play, tied it, and then the Lightning didn't even touch the puck in OT before they won it on a goal by Chikrin, who, of course, is well-known down in the South
From Boca,
area.
hometown boy, yeah.
There you go. So anyhow, is the house on fire? No. Is there panic? No. Is there concern? And are their eyes open? Absolutely. This is a team that has high expectations. They know that this is a league that you can't fall too far behind in. And I believe that John Cooper is not one of those guys to say, it's early. It's not early. These are points that are just as valuable now as they will be in March and April when there will be teams scrambling for those extra 2 or 3 or 4 points. So we'll see. They've got another back-to-back coming up at Detroit and at Columbus on the weekend, Friday, Saturday.
Brent, you can jump in at any time because I got a million. You jump in whenever you want. Here's one thing that I heard, Dave, and you can go down. I'm going to open the door on the Brawl for It All here a couple of Saturdays ago, but somebody just said to me the other day, the Lightning seem to be playing rougher than they ever have, and we kind of saw that last night in the game. Is that a accurate statement, and is there a goal to do that? Is that a plan of the Bolts?
This is just my opinion and my observation. I'm not giving you any kind of insight into any conversations I've had with the coach or any of the players. This is strictly my observation. And I would say, absolutely. This is what I believe. I think they want to be harder to play against, and that doesn't just mean with a heavy forecheck or playing fast, but I mean a little more pushback than we've seen from this group in recent times. In my opinion, let's the Lightning lost in the first round of the Florida Panthers last year in 5 games, and they got pushed around at key moments, especially in that pivotal game 4 down in Sunrise. Now, the Florida Panthers pushed everybody around, and they've been doing that for a while. And I think for one, I think the Lightning are sick and tired of it because the Panthers have flipped a script in the state of Florida. They have started doing what the Lightning have done for years, and that is they were the team that would get a lead on you and choke you out and snuff out the rest of the game and push back when they had to. And for whatever reason, they got away from that. Look no further than the waiver wire pickup of one 25-year-old Curtis Douglas, who has spent the last 5 years in the American League, has never played in the NHL until the last 2 or 3 games here with the Lightning. He's 6'9". He fought in his very first shift on opening night against Curtis McDermott, a guy who's been around a while, of the Ottawa Senators. And that is flat out. Julian Breezeball came out on our telecast and said, we needed a guy who is unpleasant to play against. We felt we didn't have that. And he went on to say that teams that have that guy are reluctant to give him up. And it's hard to get that guy away from other teams, especially if you're within the division or inside the East. So he challenged his staff and his pro scouts to find the next guy. So they had this Curtis Douglas earmarked for a while, going back several months now. He was with the Utah organization and playing with Tucson, and he got put on waivers, and they wasted no time, snapped him up, and he's played, I believe, in 3 of the 4 games so far. So we'll see. But that, to me, tells me that this team wants to be tougher and rougher and push back a whole lot more than they have in recent times.
Dave, do you think, looking at your goaltending situation compared to what was last year, a guy like Vasilevsky, I've heard nothing but the fact that, he's now healthy and doing his regular routine that he wasn't able to do maybe the last 18 months. That's pivotal for you guys going forward, wouldn't you think?
Oh, yeah. Pivotal is putting it mildly. Did you say you heard that he's not healthy? Is that what you said there, Brent?
No, I've heard he's healthy now. I heard
The
healthiest he's been in the last couple of seasons, and he's finally able to kind of go through his regular, game day routines that he maybe hadn't been able to do because of injury in the past. And, I think a lot of people in the organization is looking to him to step up and be, that world-class goaltender that we have all known him to be.
Yeah. Okay. Just let me give you, I don't want to say I'm going to correct you on a couple of things, but he has always stepped up. And he is one of the hardest working, much like Bobrovsky of the Panthers. Much respect to that guy. He is a very hard worker, a diligent guy in terms of preparation, both mentally and physically, as is Vasilevsky. And there's no question about it. He is the backbone of this team. And I think we saw an excellent performance again last night from Andrei Vasilevsky in the loss at Washington. He was brilliant. He looked very, very good. The overtime goal was, it's a crapshoot. It's 3-on-3. There was a backdoor pass, and it was in the net, and you can't blame him for that at all. In fact, John Cooper said post-game that he felt that Vasi has gotten better and better with each of his 3 starts. He doesn't have a win in regulation yet, but he will, they'll judge him on the body of work that he's putting forward, and he's getting better. This is a goalie that only played 2 periods in the preseason out of 7 games because he wasn't quite right. They didn't say what was wrong or what was up. They just called it player management. And we didn't see him skating until I think the first week into camp or something along those lines. So he didn't get the full preparation on the ice with the team. So he's kind of catching up a little bit. And based on what I saw last night, he's good to go. But make no mistake about it, they've got several key players on this team, but none more important than him.
Can you tell me something about John Cooper? I'm just fascinated by this guy, Dave. He graduated Notre Dame College with my brother, class of 1986, longest tenured head coach in the NHL. And I just feel like in a role like yours, it must be a treat to deal with him every day. It looks that way anyways.
Yeah, sure. I mean, listen, he's going to go down as one of the great coaches of all time. He's not finished yet. And the thing that I marvel at with Coop are a couple of things, and this goes for a lot of good coaches at that elite level, of which obviously we would include John Cooper. He has got the ability to keep the message fresh, especially with a tenure as long as he's had here in Tampa Bay, a contract that has quietly been extended I haven't had any conversations with him about his extension. He was going into the final season, but it's been reported in a couple of places that he has signed an extension, and they've chosen to keep that quiet, and you can respect that. I think it's important to get it out there because fans around here don't want to see him go anywhere. But to keep the message fresh with a generation of players that just gets younger and younger, and that's a different dynamic entirely from when he even came into the league 13 seasons ago. Secondly, you asked about, is the house on fire here with the Lightning? Time and again, I've seen John Cooper right the ship and deliver the message and to straighten things out. And the catchphrase is, we've got things to clean up. Well, he gets it cleaned up, and that takes some doing. And that goes hand in hand, I think, with the message and with the delivery of that with these players, because a lot of players could say, oh, geez, maybe this isn't going to go our way this year, or they wouldn't be able to correct it fast enough. Rarely does this team go on an extended slide, certainly in my time. And he's able to do that with this group, get them corrected and get them back to his system. And process is a key word, buzzword that he uses all the time. Trust the process. And the process has been getting it done year in, year out, 8 straight years in the playoffs and coming off another very good regular season. And that's why I think the correction will continue right now this season with this team.
I mean, John Cooper in this league is just world class, so respected. The one thing that I see with John Cooper is the situation that how he handled it coming out of the Stamkos area. He had a player that was the face of this franchise for so many years, and coming out of that, he's continued to put a productive, competitive team on the ice. And you look at that Tampa arena now, and the way they performed the second half of the season last year, coming into the playoffs, a lot of people had picked him to go all the way. And that's a testament to him and how he's handled that situation and how he continues to handle that team. And, just a world-class guy altogether. I was happy to hear that he got, extended. And, quietly, I think they talked about it a little bit last night on the national broadcast at in Washington. And, what he's done with that program since the exit of Stamkos has been nothing but, professional and, for years to come. I think, you guys are in a great situation with him.
Yeah, I would agree. This team and this building is sold out night after night, and this fan base here has been very passionate. Those fans that are watching here on this podcast right now are shaking their heads in agreement. They have a real deep connection with this team here. I see more Lightning flags and license plates and all that, hats and shirts, than I see between the Rays and Bucks combined. I really do, and that's not just coming from a guy who works for the Lightning. That is my observation. Obviously, the Bucks are having a great season as well. I am a baseball fan. I watch the Rays. I'm just saying this is a hockey town. There are Bucks fans who would say, oh, it's a Bucks place. But from what I see, the Lightning are entrenched here. A big reason for that is the fact they've been successful on the ice. There is a huge community outreach from an organizational standpoint. They give back to the community, but it all comes down to winning and being entertaining on the ice, which John Cooper has been able to deliver, along with a great core year in, year out. And let's not discount the management of Julien BriseBois, who has taken over from Steve Yzerman. And you bring up the Steven Stamkos situation. That is a sticky one, boy. And it was ultimately Julien BriseBois who said, Stammer, this is our offer right here. We're not going to go any further. This is a franchise icon, a pillar of all the success we're just talking about. Yet he did what he felt he had to do to keep this team competitive, not only for a year or two, but for an extended window, to keep making the playoffs and to keep being on those prediction lists of a team that can truly contend for the Stanley Cup. It's a tough call, boy, but he made it.
Last one for you, Rambo, and I'm going to have to ask you about the CFL, but before I do, Brent and I go to a lot of games in Tampa with the Panthers there, and I remember the first time we drove in, we're looking around at the banners on the buildings and everything, and we looked at each other, we're like, ooh, we got a ways to go in Sunrise to catch up to Tampa as a hockey town. And you were mentioning before we went to air that you've seen the rise that here. Right? Talk about the rise of the rivalry, if you don't mind, because it was at ground zero when you showed up, and all of a sudden, man, it's Bettman says one of the best in sport.
Yeah. Let's face it. It wasn't a rivalry before they met in the playoffs a few years ago. What was that, 22, 21? one of those 2 years where they met for the first time ever in the Stanley Cup playoffs. And the main reason for that is they were never really good at the same time. And mostly it was Tampa was always kind of, good and in the playoffs, and Florida never was. And those are the facts. I came in there plenty of times as a national broadcaster for Canada where it was half full. I remember going to get a Starbucks around the corner from whatever the rink was called back then, because they've had it's been named 7 different things since I've been doing games. And I think it's going to be Amarant for a while because of the success of the team. And I'm getting my coffee and my credentials hanging around my neck. And he says, "What's that all about?" I says, "Oh, I'm going to the game." "What game?" "The Panthers." "What do? They play, it's in the NHL." "There's an NHL team here?" I said, we're talking 2-minute drive from this Starbucks, and he had no idea. And so, listen, it all comes down to winning. And they've gone to 3 consecutive Stanley Cup finals now. They've got 2 banners hanging from their rafters, and they've done it with they've become the envy of a lot of teams around the league with the way they've been able to build that team. Not only, the big stars and the pieces that they already had in guys like Ekblad and Barkov, but the crafty moves that Bill Zito has made building the depth players like Losterinen, like Gus Forsling, a waiver wire pickup, like signing Nico Mikla before he got his extension. I'm talking about bringing him in. Key moves like that have built this team to what it is right now. So I'm glad that people have recognized that, and I'm glad this rivalry has been elevated. That series that was in the first round of a few years ago, the first time ever, it went 6. The Lightning won it. It was an awesome series. One of the best playoff series I've ever had the pleasure and privilege to call. From the drop of the puck in game 1, I don't know if you remember that series, it was on right through game 6 when the Lightning finally put the upstart Panthers away. And you could see they were starting to enter the conversation there in that series. And you guys know well that that's when a rivalry really gets elevated, when you meet in the playoffs. And they've done that 3 times now. So it's great. It's a lot of fun. I'm looking forward to when they meet in the middle of November down in Sunrise for the first time.
Well, and if people want to call the Panthers bullies, they did learn from the Lightning. You just said that. The Lightning ran them out of the rink back then. That's when the Panthers said, we got to get tougher. So you can look in the mirror, Dave. And lastly, CFL. Before I let you go, what do you want to say? That's where Dave and I won't say cut our teeth. Dave was famous far before his CFL days, but it was decades ago, Dave, when we met. We still love the league, and we always talk about it when we see each other.
Yeah, and you guys must be excited about the season the Saskatchewan Roughriders are having. They've been cruising for most of this year. I know Hamilton hit a bit of a bump, but it's good to see those 2 teams at the top, because for years, those 2 teams were not at the top. It was, Winnipeg's run the show in that league for the last few years, and Montreal had a long run. Of course, the Argos won the last, they've had some success of late winning Grey Cups, but it's fun to see. I haven't watched as much in recent weeks because I've been focusing more on preparing for the NHL, but I watch games, and I will say I love all the rule changes that are coming. Each and every one of them I'm on board with. I see the logic in each and every one. I see they all make sense to me, and some of them were overdue, like moving the goalpost to the back of the end zone. I like the Rouge thing, it didn't completely disappear. So I am fine with all the rule changes that are coming up. I know there's a lot of fans that were upset north of the border, but much like the rule changes that have taken place, major rule changes that took place in the sport of baseball, one of the most traditional sports there is in the Big 4 pro sports leagues, nobody talks about them anymore. Why? Because it made the game better. And I think that's what we're ultimately going to see in the Canadian Football League.
Well, you might want to put on a helmet there in Tampa up on the Gulf Coast side, because I'm going to make a meme out of that. I wrote it down. I love all the rule changes, everyone. So be prepared, Dave.
Don't open up your
Yeah, I know. Yeah. Well, you know how CFL fans are. Rambo, you are so great, man. I'm always so happy to see you. You're always a ray of sunshine. So go Bolts. I don't mind saying it. Thanks for the time today.
You're very welcome. Always good to be on with you, and nice to meet you, Brent, a fellow Canadian. And you said we had a connection before there, Rod. I've got a connection to Brent.
That you were a homeowner in Regina. We're not going to go down that story. And he's from Regina. You were a landlord.
I'm sure, at some point in time we know some of the same people somewhere in Regina.
You might have dated that girl too. I don't.
Well, good night.
Thanks, Dave. On that note, what are you turning red for?
Well, it's just, going back down memory lane.
Yeah, exactly. Scooch right up to that microphone. Okay, It's Brent Woltman and my time here. And I want to say it again. Thank you to the Bolts fans, because this rivalry is getting a little kooky. It is. And they were just very polite, saying, can you get more Bolts talk? Can you get Bolts guests on? I'm working on it, man. It's not that easy, but Dave's our first. So, yeah.
One thing I can tell you, Rod, is how can you not love the fact that we have two hockey teams in South Florida that are showing up some of the longest rivalries in hockey history. And if you're not excited to be a hockey fan in Florida, you're not a hockey fan.
Right.
I mean, it's just been great. I mean, it's putting butts in the seats, and people are talking about it across the country. And, we just continue to grow as a market here in South Florida, which, back when these teams were given franchises, people didn't think it would ever happen.
I know.
So look at where we're at now.
It's funny because you found me on the Panthers Positive Facebook page. Shout out, Alex. Right?
Yes.
And, with regards to the rivalry and so forth, at that time, I don't know what it was like to have an empty rink and a bad team, right? And people have kind of stuck, because now it's 5 seasons I've been covering the Panthers, but I kept getting this, you weren't around in the bad times. I'm like, well, that's not really my fault, but you were. You were buying tickets.
It's funny is, like you mentioned before, growing up in Saskatchewan, we didn't have an NHL team, so I didn't have the opportunities to go to NHL games on a regular basis. And coming to South Florida, they had a team, and I got here and I looked up tickets in the early 2000s, and I was like, wow, $15, I can go to a game. And I can see the Eric Lindros and the Mary Lemieux and the Yaugers of the world, not necessarily going to see the Panthers, but because they were not a good team at that point. And, you could buy a ticket for $15 and you could basically go sit anywhere you want. And I remember the first time I went, and we kind of scoped out some seats, and we moved down and we sat right on the glass. And growing up as a kid in Canada, I mean, that's an absolute dream. And, we went through those times, and, the team got sold, and the Viola family bought the team, and, hats off to them. I mean, the culture that they have brought to this organization in the short amount of time, the past 5 years, basically, to see this team turn around. And as any hockey fan, you want to see your team win. And, we went through those times, and the most exciting point prior to the Stanley Cup playoffs 4 years ago was when the first time the Panthers made the playoffs in my time of going. And I think we lost in 7 to the Islanders. And I don't remember what year that was, but, and then this team goes on this incredible run into the playoffs 3 or 4 years ago. I guess it's now 4 years now, right? The first
Longer than that, I think. 21?
When did they
21, 22, 23, 20. Oh, 23. Yeah.
They squeaked into the playoffs and went on this magical run. And, it's from then it's been a dream. I mean, watching this team come from where it was to where it's at now, and the culture that this team has, come up with it, and it's great as a fan.
Well, we'll probably go a little long, not too much longer here, but we want to thank Dave Randorf, the voice of the Tampa Bay Lightning, for coming on. And we can sit here and talk about, like all the other Panthers podcasts that there are, talk about the games and break them all down. But the one thing I keep hearing about is the brawl, and you didn't go that night. I was in your seats.
You were in
with my neighbor Fish.
Correct.
People are still talking about. Were you upset you missed it?
I really wasn't upset that I missed it.
You were watching.
I watched it.
Yeah.
I had an opportunity to watch it, and it's funny because there's two sides of it. There's people that want to see it, and there's people that don't want to see it. And you and I come from a different world of the days back in the WHL where every Friday night was that.
Oh, this was nothing. Yeah.
Right, and it was kind of like a everyday thing, but. You and I talked a little bit. Do you expect it to carry out throughout the season? And I told you, I really think everything stemmed around the hit on Hagel from AJ Greer. And I think, AJ Greer will probably have to answer that bell come regular season. And I don't think you see any of that until, possibly the playoffs.
But I didn't think it was going to happen that Saturday night. So...
The history will tell you that it's not normal to happen back to back like that in 2 preseason games. But I think you talked a little bit with Rambo, and that's kind of setting the tone. And again, it's got people talking, and then you got Gary Bettman saying it's one of the best rivalries in sports.
Well,
is that comment made without those back to back games?
Yeah, of course not. But it's funny. I mean, I kind of get why the Panthers fans have the chip on their shoulder. Tampa fans don't seem to have a chip on their shoulder, but the Panthers fans always did. And I posted that meme to all my social media that Bettman said, and people are laughing at it. They're like, yeah, sure, whatever. And I can kind of see why people here would get offended.
Listen, I mean, the Florida Panthers were little brother for a lot of years to the Tampa Bay Lightning and the success that they had. And like you said, as a fan going to Tampa and seeing the energy around that stadium prior to a game, and the sides of a wall of a building being painted with the bolts and the lights posts, and you didn't see that here in Florida. And like Dave said, going to a Starbucks, they didn't even know they had an NHL team.
Unbelievable.
And, you go there and for years and years and years as being little brother, and you finally get over that hump, and you bring in guys like Matthew Tkachuk, and you go to the playoffs, and you get tough, and we beat them, and, the tides have turned a little bit. But I'm telling you now, I mean, I look at this Tampa team this year, and, they have not changed. And a lot of people at the end of last year were picking them to go very deep into the playoffs, and they're going to be there at the end of the year this year. That's my guess.
Well, they'll probably end up playing each other again in the playoffs. And it's so hard to believe that after 30 years, of course, the division playoff alignment changing to this has helped.
Right.
But I don't want to spill your secrets, but I know how you felt when Barkov got hurt. And by the way, we are live, everybody. If you want to fire some questions away, you can. I know. No, it's quiet. And it's the highest viewership we've ever had. So literally, if you want to fire in questions and comments for Brent Woltman and I, please do. But I know how you felt when Barkey went down on the first day of practice. I won't say what you said, but how are you feeling now about the chances of a three-peat?
I look at this team, and I think this team right now is a very confident group just because of the culture that they have, and they're going into games and they're playing Panther hockey. And, I think Alexander Barkov is irreplaceable. I mean, if you look at, what he was able to do and create for this team, it's going to be very tough. Do I think they still have a chance to repeat? You know what? We're in week 2, not ringing any bells yet, but, there's the trade deadline. There's a lot of things that can happen between now and then. Do they have the nucleus to go for a long run into the playoffs? Absolutely. Have they played well without Barkov in the past? Yes. Time will tell. I mean, as a fan, I want to say, I think they have every opportunity. Being realistic, they've definitely had some roadblocks put in front of them. And, time will tell as a team and see what they show up as.
So you think there's a chance? It's just interesting, though, because everybody's talking about how competitive the Atlantic Division is, which it is. Rambo just said it's the most competitive division in the NHL. So you can't afford to slip.
I think it's going to be imperative for this Panther team to go out and win the hockey games that they're supposed to win, and make sure that they're getting those games in the bag, because they're going to count come January, February when it comes down to it. And they have to beat the Chicagos, the Phillies, the Buffaloes of the world. Every game is going to be very important because they have a big long road in front of them, and the big tongue thing for them is every stadium that they go into this year, every team is going to play up to them because they are the Stanley Cup defending champions, and no matter where you go, they're going to get their best out of those teams, and it's not going to be an easy road. But this core group, man, they're deep. You look at the 3 lines that are intact, and those players all have championship belts, and we're moving forward one which way or the other. And Paul Maurice says it best, and it doesn't matter, and they're going to go out there and they're going to compete, and whether they start on the road or at home, doesn't matter to him.
Well, we have a lot of fun on this show. I love when we get the viewer comments, especially when I ask a day or two in advance, what questions do you have? And our beloved Nick Fairbanks, what do you got, Ben?
Nothing.
Oh, yeah, okay. Our beloved Nick Fairbanks, who from time to time co-hosts this show, asked last week, Bure 1096, he said, when are they going to start missing Barkov and Tkachuk? And I think everybody answered that and said they already do. Right? You talk about the depth. The depth is there, but come on.
If you look at a Barkov of the worlds, one of the players that comes to mind that I think is going to affect immediately and is a guy like Sam Reinhart. I mean, if you look at, is Sam Reinhart a 40-goal scorer without Alexander Barkov? That will be told. And, the power play especially, Barkov created so much space for a guy like Reinhart because of the attention that he drew. I think you're going to see it in certain aspects of their game where Barkov's going to be very missed. And I think you'll see certain aspects as the in-your-face style that the Panthers play and the suffocating style, that's not going to go anywhere. And teams, it's very tough to play against. And if they can go out and execute night in and night out Panther style of hockey that they've been, known for the last 3 or 4 years, I think they're going to continue to have success.
Panthers got spanked in Philly the other night, 5-2. 2 empty netters. We all watched the game, so the score looked worse than what the game was. I didn't see a lot of sky is falling comments from the fans on social media. Are they getting better, do you think?
I think they're starting to understand the game a little bit better. And, that's a testament to winning. I mean, you're getting more people involved and they're watching it and paying attention. And, you see it, walking around, and I'm out on the boat on the weekends and people are seeing my Panthers hat and they're saying, "Go Cats." And, I think from 10 years ago, people would be like, they're terrible and selling them down the river. But, I think a lot of people understand now it's a long season. And this is week 2 of a very, very long season. And I don't think there's any reason to ring the bell. And certainly happy that we're not the Miami Dolphins.
Ooh, it's fugly. You know what that is, folks, right? It's fugly.
Yeah.
Flippin' ugly with the Dolphins. I can't believe what they're saying on the radio. I'm not going to go any further down there. But, just with I should stop for a second. Before we go any further, we are brought to you by Unbridled Weddings and Events. You might know them, Brent. If you are planning a wedding in South Florida, look up Bree in Wellington. Name top 10 wedding planners in the USA. Unbridled Wedding and Events. Also Beach House Pompano and Cool Bet Canada. Sign up at coolbet.com. Use the promo code RP200 for a welcome bet bonus up to $200. But as far as with these fans, in Canada, they're going nuts. I'm sure you follow a lot of people in Canada. They're going nuts already. They're like, huge game for the Flames tonight. No, it's not. It's October the 15th, okay? Chill out. So I feel like the Panthers fans have brought down their neuroticism. They're kind of cool. Are they ever going to get up to like nutso like Canadian fans?
You would like to think so.
Yeah.
Obviously hockey being Canada's game, I just don't think there's anything that comes close to it.
Okay.
Being a Leafs fan and growing up in Western Canada as a kid, as a Gretzky and an Oilers fan, that's just a special thing. And Canadian fans live and die by the hockey season, and we'll see. But I don't see the U.S. fans getting to that point. Right now I think the Panthers are very much a playoff, team, and if the Panthers don't make the playoffs, then people may start to bark a little. But right now everybody's accustomed to them winning, and
it's good now.
It's great when you're on top.
It's good now, yeah. But you lived in Milwaukee for a while.
I did.
So and then Chicago would be your closest NHL team there, right?
Yep. And
do you see a Canadian-style fan base there, like the Bostons, the Chicagos, the Detroits?
Yeah, original 6 team, of course. And, one of the reasons why, again, it was the affordability. I couldn't afford to go to a game in Chicago. A good mutual friend of ours, Lauren Mulliken, when he was there, we got down to a couple of games, but, upper-level seats in Chicago for the top level were 20 years ago, we're in the $175.
Even then?
Yeah. So, $15, man, you couldn't go to a movie and get a popcorn for that. So for me as a hockey fan coming down here, it was great. I got to see everybody who I wanted to see come through, and, and listen, as a fan, I'm tickled that they're winning, and, to have a chance to go and see 2 Stanley Cups be presented on home ice as a hockey fan, it doesn't get any better than that.
Well, what I love is going back and forth with fans of both teams. I really do. So I want to thank you all for the welcome that we've had now in season 3 of doing this show. But I've been here now 5 seasons, and people have been really, really nice. They realize that I'm hockey first, you're hockey first, and they respect that.
One of the things that absolutely amazed me was last year in the playoffs, going to Tampa and proudly wearing Panthers gear, and they were welcoming. They were. 2 years ago, they were even wishing us well. Once we put them out of the playoffs, they were, hey, I hope you guys win it all. And last year, not so much, but, just good folks, good hockey people. And like Rambo said, that just that whole camaraderie and that stadium and the culture around there with their fans, there's no doubt they are certainly a hockey town.
Oh, yeah. Can you put us on a split screen, Ben, before we shut it down? We were walking out of Benchmark International Arena.
Benchmark.
Yeah, at the time, Amalie Arena. Me and Brent. together. And was RJ with us?
I think he was.
Yeah, well, there was the fight with the fans, and I'm like, I'm not going to say who was who. The wife was aghast that her husband was drunk and starting fights, and it was Panthers fans and Lightning fans, and we looked at each other like, oh boy,
Yep.
this isn't good.
It started.
Yeah, that's the whole thing. You want to get to this point, yet you don't want to get to that point. How do you keep a lid on it?
It's funny because when we first started going to the playoffs, and I remember, the first round of that year we played Boston, and nobody picked us to even have a chance to win. And Boston fans came into this arena down here and basically almost outnumbered Panther fans in that first round, and some of it got nasty.
Oh yeah,
And, we saw it in our section, and people were fighting, and you kind of expect that from these, from the Northeast Rangers, Boston rivalry, because of, obviously a lot of the population here is from those areas, and they're very passionate fans. And, we're starting to see that with Tampa fans. And, listen, I think it's great. I mean, am I for fans fighting? No, but, there's nothing wrong with going back and forth and cheering on your team and having a spirited match.
Well, appreciate these times where we are. I know I do. And, Brent and I, we always meet up at the game. Sometimes I'm in the press box. Sometimes I'm down in the crowd. I love walking the concourse. I love talking to fans and also love talking to the ushers. And one night, an usher, it was in the playoffs. The Panthers had just beaten the Bruins. They were facing the Leafs. And an usher said to me, what are we going to get here with Leaf fans? And I said, what do you mean? He goes, well, we had to throw out 38 drunk Bruins fans. They're such jerks. I said, no, Leaf fans. No, they're not going to cause a problem. They're going to get here early, banging on the door 90 minutes before the game to get in early. And if they lose, you're going to have to throw them out because they'll be crying in their chair, but they're not going to cause any problems. And that is exactly what happened. But speaking of fans in the crowd, hey, Kelly and Charlie talking about hockey too. Hey guys, 55 Chem showing up. Kelly Francis. Finally, Ben, as we're going to go off the air here before too long. You missed Dave Randorf, the voice of the Lightning, but I appreciate you showing up. Again, split screen if you don't mind. Brent was nice enough to take me to the bare knuckle ice wars. We have hardly talked about it since Friday night.
It was an interesting situation.
Are people asking you what you thought of it? Because they're asking me.
I think they were more in tune in how grisly it was.
It was pretty grisly.
It was pretty grisly.
Yeah.
I think you got to have a few screws loose to get in there and do something like that. But from an entertainment standpoint, and it was certainly entertaining. There was no.
I would go again.
I think I would go again. Yeah, I mean, I like.
Go ahead, Ben. Jump on.
Well, I was gonna say I know the gentleman that runs it, Ian Heinich. He's actually done a show here multiple times.
Okay.
Yeah, and he I saw him put it together. In one of your videos, I was like, oh, I see everybody. I see all the old.
You knew all those guys?
Yeah, everybody that you were filming, and I looked. Oh, I know Scrappy. Scrappy's he does a lot of stuff with the 561. He helps catch pedophiles and things like that. But he was in it. He's got a huge following. But I was blown away. I was like, oh, what's Rod doing there at a bare knuckle? That's
thanks to this guy.
Yeah, it was.
You know what I found very interesting with it was it became more of a U.S. versus Canada thing.
No way, really?
Which always makes me uncomfortable. Does it make you uncomfortable?
I mean, it's just odd. It's just, I guess, the world that we're living in right now, and it really had nothing to do with it. It was just two guys in there beating the tar at it.
I never even thought about it. I didn't even think about it.
Right.
But there was people in the crowd, F Canada, and that kind of stuff. It just makes me uncomfortable.
Yeah, it was just strange. I mean, I don't know what caused that, but I guess some of the guys came out with American flags. But listen, it was entertaining. Do I think it's the next UFC thing? I think it's got a long ways to go, but it was a good Friday night out with the boys.
They think it's the next UFC thing. The bare knuckle guys do. And I mean, honestly, so the next night the Panthers played. So again, I'm talking to the ushers and they're like, some said it wasn't a great crowd. I'm like, it filled up more as the night went along.
It did. It certainly got busier as it went on. And, again, it's, we'll see where it goes. I think there was a lot of Panther fans there, and, hey, right behind that, the Panthers extend Jonah Gazovich for 2 years, which is, the Florida tough guy. And,
yeah, let's get him out there fighting.
Yeah, amen.
Benny boy, we got a comment. Can you read this from Kirby at the Cats and Rats Florida Panthers Hockey Podcast? Wow. Would you mind? Yeah, here we go.
All right, now it's okay.
Ding, ding.
We got Cats and Rats from the Florida Panther Hockey Podcast. Old school UFC 1990s feels/vibes. Interesting discussion point moving forward. A short 5 to 10 years ago, hockey fans didn't want fighting in the game. Yeah, U.S.-Canada stuff, silly.
I said to Brent as we were walking in, you're never going to have a tough time finding guys that want to fight. in the street, and you're never going to have a tough time finding hockey players. So this isn't going away. And I had a great time. How many times have I thanked you? 3 times here. I thanked you the next day. I had such a great time. But one of the fighters, I never told you this, DM'd me the next day and apologized that he lost. And I said, bro, most guys don't have the balls to even show up. There's nothing to apologize for. Yeah. Very Canadian of him to do that.
Listen, that guy got in the ring with a
killer,
with a 2-time UFC light heavyweight champion of the world
who played hockey
with concrete hands that played a little bit of junior hockey up in the Northeast. I mean, hats off to him, because I was sitting there with a beer in my hand enjoying myself.
Oh yeah, I felt bad that he felt bad. I'm like, my God, you don't need to apologize.
And he wants Canadian thing.
I know. Well, he wasn't the only guy. I don't know if you were watching. There was a guy from Saskatoon got out of the ring, and he just got beaten up. He had the long red beard, and he looked up at the crowd and goes, "I'm sorry." And I'm like, "What? Who does that?" Canadians. Yeah. Exactly.
Again, it was an entertaining night out on the town, and would I do it again? Sure. I mean, why not?
Coming to a rink near you, like Bare Knuckle Ice Wars, I had a lot of people writing me saying, who is running this? We need to get this into our barn. So, yeah.
I guess they took a little clip from the Panthers Lightning preseason game and they put it in the rink.
Exactly, yeah. Brent, thanks for coming down. This has been fun.
Absolutely. Enjoyed it.
Any last words from you, Ben, before we say goodbye?
No, this was a great show.
It was fun.
It was a good show today. I thought it was great having him in, and we got to just get people commenting. Guys, what are you doing?
That's the rub. You realized I've been doing this for a little while. When you have guests, they want to sit back and watch.
That's fair.
You need to solicit the comments. So it's kind of hard to do both. You know what I mean? But anyways, you're all dressed up. You got a date later or what?
No, I got a show. I'm going to be on a show later. I like dressing up.
You're on a show now.
That is true. Yeah, I'm on a show now. I got an interview later.
Okay, good stuff. All right, thank you, Ben. Thank you, everybody, for tuning in. We'll see you next week. Thanks to Dace Randorf, by the way, the TV voice of the Tampa Bay Lightning. We'll see you next week here on Florida's favorite hockey podcast, Cats and Bolts.